Hi, I want to take a little bit of time today to talk you through some of the revisions that you're going to be making on your literature review and looking forward to the choice of methods and things that you'll write about in your research proposal so that you can continue drafting that project this week. So I'm going to show you a couple of examples of things, help you look at how to compose Blog 8, which is drawing from material from your literature review, and set you up for a bunch of reading and reviewing this week. When we look at the tasks for this week, you can see that your major objective is planning and organizing your research proposal. Continuing on from the Blog 7 introduction that you wrote for week 10, that you'll get feedback from me on early in the week. And you'll want to use that feedback to continue to revise and plan that project. There are a number of chapters from the Wadsworth Guide for you to read this week, and I added in Chapter 5, Conducting Primary Research, that we would have reviewed earlier in the semester, but I think it's a good time to review that because you'll be proposing research methods for your research proposal, and this goes over a number of primary research methods. It doesn't, of course, cover all of them. So one thing that you're going to want to do is take a look at the kinds of research methods that are described in the articles that you've been reading in your discourse community to see what research methods are valued in that community. So for example, to look at some of the writing studies articles, I'll pull up Elizabeth Wardle's Authority, Identity, and Learning to Write in New Workplaces. And in that text, she describes her analysis of Alan's interaction with others in the humanities department that he works in. So here she has a description of her research methods. She says, for 7 months, I observed and interviewed Alan, a new computer specialist in a humanities department at a large Midwestern university. So in her description here, she gives us some context, but also the methods that she used. I also collected 140 email messages he wrote and many others that were written to him, and spent time in public computer labs listening as people discussed their computer problems with Alan. Finally, near the end of the study, I conducted a written survey with all of the members of the humanities department regarding their use of computers and technology and their awareness of various initiatives Alan had discussed with them via email. Okay, so a number of research methods happening here. Observation, interviews, analysis of email messages, and a written survey. In many of these methods are discussed in Chapter 5. You might also come across things like case studies or different kinds of analysis when you review the text that you've been looking at to see what kinds of research are used in the field. And you also have to think about what kind of research is appropriate for the question that you want to answer. So, do you need multiple research methods to answer this question? Is a single research method, like a survey, going to be appropriate? You want to design the most appropriate study for the question or questions that you're asking. If we take a look at Materiality and Genre, the study of discourse communities by Devitt, Boarshi, and Reeve, they are conducting genre analysis, and throughout their text, they analyze these key genres like the jury instructions. So that is a deeper analysis of a particular text that they're using to conduct their study. So you want to be asking yourself, what are the research methods that will best help me answer my question, and do I need multiple research methods to answer these research questions? Now, your research question is likely taking, if not a very different direction, at least it's becoming more focused. Toward the end of your literature review, many of you started to hit on, like, here's a thing that I'd really like to study. And for many of you in my comments, either on your project 3B, your video, or in your literature review, or in one of your blogs, I've asked you questions about, like, what if you did a study like this? Now, you don't have to do the kind of study that I propose. Those are just things that I was thinking about as I was watching your work or reading your work. So, we can keep talking about that, and I'll also, again, give you feedback on Blog 7 this week so that we can get right into designing that study in the next 2 weeks as you draft Project 4. For a moment, though, let's take a look at your directed writing task for this week, which is Blog 8, writing Cornell notes for Project 4. I'm going to jump to that set of directions real quickly and then show you the beginning of an example as I start working on that task as well. So here are the directions for this blog post. Upload a set of Cornell notes in which you identify key pieces of evidence from the sources you're using in your research proposal and describe how, where, and why you'll use these sources in the proposal. And so I'm going to talk you through a little bit of that example. We're going to include at least 15 entries. An entry is one piece of evidence plus this description. So let me jump over to a Word document and talk you through how I'm beginning to set that up so you can see how you would start to set that up as well. Okay, so first I want to take you over to the student sample that is in the Week 10 folder of a research proposal, just to take a quick look at the introduction. So you can see where the student has assertions, statements that he or she is making, followed up by in-text citations that indicate the various sources from the literature review that make that assertion or that the student would use as evidence. So this visual is like the end result of what we're working on, of what the Cornell notes are leading you to in this draft of the research proposal, so that you're able to show to your readers which authors and scholars and researchers in the field are you're pointing to support these statements. So in yellow, I have the assertion, and then in green, I have the various authors that student would reference as making the statement. A statement like, as the previous generation of teachers are leaving the field through retirement, there's a need to replace them with qualified teachers. So again, remember, you can't just say that and act like it's your argument. You have to show this is a discussion in my field. And here the student does this by pointing to two different authors, Olson and Anderson. Okay, but we're going to use the Cornell notes this week to start to work toward that process. So I'm working on just a little bit of the beginning of an example so we can talk through this, and then I'll leave some notes in it for you, and I'll upload this document so that you have a starting point. But I have not done the complete task here yet. I think you should anticipate that working on this project, working on this blog, might take you a couple hours, if not more. I would start thinking about it early in the week and maybe work on it throughout the week, because you'll have to review your draft of your introduction, go back to your literature review, and maybe even go back to adding more research in. So again, the purpose of this task is to think about how evidence from research in the field will support your rationale for a description of the problem that you want to look into in your proposed research study. The format that you're going to use is a 2-column journal. I use the columns feature in Microsoft Word. There are other ways you can set this up with other programs, so it doesn't have to be a Word document if you want to use something else. That just might be the easiest, particularly because then you can copy and paste the text right into sections of your draft. On the left-hand side, you'll put an assertion that you want to make, and on the right-hand side, the evidence that you want to use to support that. Remember, this evidence is in the very beginning of your introduction, will likely just be parenthetically referenced, but then you'll develop that later in the literature review. So the exercise, or the stretching, I want to really think about exercise not just as a task, but like where you have to work through something, is to identify key observations from your introduction draft that you can support with evidence from your research, and to include 15 pieces of evidence in the journal. So on your right-hand side, here is where you'll have the 15 pieces. Now, you might use multiple pieces of evidence to support one assertion. So you're going to count on this side, on the right-hand side. So here's one example, one from the conference proposal or the conference introduction that I was working on a few weeks ago, I showed you some examples of this about the value of silence as a rhetorical responsibility. So as I look at the beginning of the literature review that I'm going to start to transition into a research proposal, one statement that I make is that the choice to not speak or to be silent, to listen, has also been explored by scholars as a powerful rhetorical tool. So then I want to look in my literature review and see which scholars have said that so that I can prove that that is true. So what I'm starting with is just pulling out some key pieces there, like Cheryl Glenn's 2004 Unspoken Rhetoric of Silence, where the author argues silence is a rhetorical art that merits serious investigation in rhetoric and composition. Here I have a statement that is partially quoted because I wanted to keep her phrase merits serious investigation. I thought that was very strong, but I'm mostly paraphrasing that. I also want to explain here how, where, and why I'm going to use this in my introduction or in my overall proposal. So I start to describe that I will be using this piece of evidence in my rationale for the study to show there's discussion in the field about the value of thinking about silence and to indicate an example of a text that takes on the question of silence as a rhetorical tool. So really here I'm just working to establish silence as a discussion in the field. Okay, I'm going to show you one other example real quickly. Here's an assertion that I make in my map to my literature review, where I say I'm going to move from these discussions of the rhetorical potential of silence to the ways that at appropriate times silence can be considered responsible practice. And as I'm going through my notes and my draft of a literature review, I see that I have this long quote where the author Cheryl Glenn is citing other authors, Foss and Griffin, and then she does an analysis of what they have to say. Now, in the draft of my literature review, and many of you did a move like this pops up as a longer quote. However, in the introduction of my to my research proposal, I don't want to be including long quotes like this. This is stuff that would really be broken down later in a paper. So here's where I need to work, while I'm working on Blog 8 this week, on paraphrasing this. I don't want to leave in long quotes. I'm going to practice paraphrasing quotes as I work on the blog this week. That will help me better integrate the ideas in my own language, but still citing the authors in my literature review. So I'll leave that note in there for you when I upload this document. So what you're going to do, again in Blog 8, is look at some key assertions you want to make, and then look at the evidence that you can draw that from. Now, here already I can see an issue in my work. Now, this just happens to be that I picked 3 examples from the same author. But let's say I get to the end of working on Blog 8, or I'm partway through it, and I notice, wait a minute, the only author that I'm talking about right now is Cheryl Glenn. But I'm supposed to include at least 6 to 10 voices here, and I think even if we look at the research proposal, it might be expanded a little bit. I can't just write about Cheryl Glenn and cite her in the introduction to my research proposal. So if I'm getting a few entries in and I see, wait a minute, I keep mentioning the same author, then what I want to do is go back and start to integrate more or conduct more research. So one tool that you might want to use is to decide which author is going to be which color, and you can color code these. So let's say every time I reference Cheryl Glenn, I'm going to make her aqua. Okay, so that I can see that. And then as I start to look over Blog 8 before I turn it in, so way before Sunday night, maybe Thursday or Friday, I can assess where I need to start to integrate more voices, more authors into my literature review and into my introduction. Okay, so this is the task you're going to work on this week. And remember that we have some opportunities to talk together this week. So let me refer you to a few of those. So, real quick, remember that this week there are 2 opportunities for you to come talk with me and even work with each other on this project. One is this Wednesday from 10 to 12. I have my open office hours in 5057 Woodward on the 9th floor. And then on Friday from 10:30 to 11:30, April 1st, there will be a group conference where you could come. I would say come with your draft of your literature review, your introduction draft, and any work you've done on these Cornell notes in preparation for Blog 8 and moving on, so that we can work through that process together a little bit and talk about how you're going to start to integrate your literature review into the draft of Project 4. That would also be a great time for us to talk about research methods if you want to bounce some ideas off me or off of each other. So I hope that I see you this week, and I hope that you have a great one. I will talk to you soon.